Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear friends. Hope you've had a wonderful week, and hopefully, inshallah, today another session of character counts is going to really maybe stimulate your ideas and make you think more about many things in life. And I do hope that, inshallah, the coming week as well, and in the coming you pass through this pandemic, you're able to utilize the time as best as you can, because this is the time that you can do a lot of things at home, sitting on your computer, learning a lot of things, and make wonderful use of this time. And hopefully, you will be a person who comes out better, stronger, and more accomplished than before. Take this as a challenge to start with. So, coming to our today's session, the first segment that we're going to talk about is that how praying can be made easy, or how in fact it has been made easy by the Prophet himself, and because of the fact that we are not well versed with a lot of things that God and His Prophet has told us, that we find prayer or regular prayer or showing interest in the prayer becoming difficult to us. So I'd like to point out a few areas in which, if you could incorporate this in your daily prayers, when you pray to God, whenever you get the chance, you'll find your prayer to be more interesting, more involving, more engaging. And before I go on, I have made this point earlier also, I can make it again as well, that prayer basically is our expression of thanking God, of remembering Him for what He has done for us, in the form of parents, in the form of the best environment that you have, the best place that you can live with, the best clothes that you can wear, the best toys that you have. So you see, there are so many blessings that God has given us, and when we pray to God, it's our expression of thanking Him, it's our expression of remembering Him. And this expression of thanking Him, this expression of remembering Him is always something which comes out of our heart. And if you want something to come out of your heart, you have to be attentive, you have to be very, very respectful of the company and the environment. So I would suggest some things today in this first segment that I hope will make your prayer, when you pray to God, very easy and very involving and very engaging. So I'm going to start off by saying that, you see, there are two parts of the prayer. One is the compulsory part. When I say prayer, I actually refer to the utterances of the prayer, what you speak in the prayer. So there's one thing as the posture of the prayer, in which you of course stand, you kneel, and you prostrate, etc. That's not what I'm going to discuss at the moment. The first thing that I would like to discuss is that what you say in the prayer, what you utter in the prayer. So there are 5 or 6 instances in which certain utterances have been made compulsory, and for those utterances, you have to pronounce them in Arabic, say them in Arabic, and I'm sure most of you would be knowing that Arabic as well. The Quran is, of course, recited, etc. I'm just going to come to that. But other than that, you'll find there are a lot of spaces and places within the prayer in which you can speak in your own language, whether it's English, whether it's Pashto, whether it's German, whether it's Farsi, whether it's Urdu. So these are the instances of the prayer in which you can connect with God in your own language, the language that you are able to speak and think and express yourselves. So you see, this makes the prayer very interesting. When you are not able to communicate to God, or when you're communicating to God in some other language that you don't understand fully, of course, communication becomes very difficult. So first, let me point out the areas which are compulsory, for which you need to learn the Arabic part, and I'm sure you've already done that. So the first is, of course, Allahu Akbar, with which you begin the prayer, and when you, of course, when you kneel and you change your postures, you say Allahu Akbar in your heart. That is something which is always a compulsory aspect. The second compulsory utterance of the prayer is the Surah Fatiha, which is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, all the way to Walad Dhalin, which of course is another prayer. It's a prayer within the prayer. It's a prayer for guidance from God. And then you read the Quran, part of the Quran. Maybe you're reading the Qul Huwallahu Ahad that you have learned by heart, or maybe some of the other surahs. So that is the third instance. The fourth instance of a compulsory utterance is when you say Sami Allahu liman hamida, which means that God heard his who expressed his gratitude. So God heard his words who expressed his gratitude. So Sami Allahu liman hamidah is the fourth instance. And the last and the final instance is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, in which you end the prayer, on which you end the prayer. So these are the 5 instances in which the Arabic words need to be pronounced. Other than that, for example, before beginning Surah Fatiha, you can talk to God in your own language. You can say words in English. You can pray in English, in Urdu, in any language. When you are in the kneeling position, when you say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, so that's not the only thing that you want to say, or you can say. Of course, you can say that, but you can say other things as well, like praying in your own language, like, for example, expressing any desire that you might have in your own language. Similar is the case with your prostration when you go for sajda. Even then, it's not compulsory that you just say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la as has been taught to you. No, in the sajda you can say anything that comes to your mind in your own language. And then when you sit in that sitting position, in that sitting posture in which we pray the Attahiyat, again the whole of the Attahiyat, starting from the very first instant when you sit and right up to Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, all that area is entirely optional for you to say whatever you like to God, to make yourself comfortable, to talk to Him, to maybe ask for forgiveness, maybe ask for some of the desires that you have, maybe ask for God to give you a very good grade, of course after your own hard work as well, and maybe ask you to God to give you some of the blessings that He has already given you and add to them. So you see, if you are able to understand the fact that there is a compulsory part of the prayer which has just five utterances which are compulsory, they are the only ones that you need to say in Arabic, and I'm sure you've already learned them. But all other places which I've just enumerated, in between the sujood, in between the prostrations, you sit in between, even in that you can make your own prayer and you make your own dua in your own language. So this is a very wide area in which you have the discretion to say whatever you would like to. And this makes the prayer a beautiful amalgam, a mixture of what you need to say to God in a language which God has prescribed, and what you can say out of your own willing desire, out of your own heart. And the reason that some parts of the prayer have been made compulsory to be said in Arabic is to create that unity in the whole Muslim Ummah, so that wherever you go, you know that there are parts when they are read aloud, for example, in prayers which are read aloud, you offer the same, you pray the same with the same words. So that compulsory part is meant to create unity wherever you go in the world, wherever you travel in the world. But other than that, you are absolutely free to express your own desires, your wishes, anything that you have in mind in your own language. And this is where I say that praying is so easy, because you see, had it been made compulsory each and every instant that at each and every posture that you have to say words in Arabic, that would have been, of course, difficult, because not always you are conversant with the Arabic language, not always you have all the things in your own repertoire. So therefore, I would say that the most important thing that you need to understand and realize here is that prayer in itself has these two portions. One is the compulsory portion, which is to be said out in Arabic, and the other is the optional portion, which is left to your discretion. So you can just say anything that you'd like. You can wish for a good spouse for yourself. You can wish for a good car for yourself. You can wish for a good career for yourself. Anything that you have in mind, and in your own language. So I think this, if you incorporate this thing in your prayer, it will make your prayer very interesting, very engaging, very involving. Don't you think so? This is the first thing that I wanted to say. The second thing is that if you want to make the prayer not a burden on yourself, and you'd like your own heart to be committed to the prayer, also do try this fact that if you want to make yourself more punctual, start off by saying one prayer or maybe two, whatever is more convenient to you, and slowly take them to 5. So when you're trying to make it a habit, it's not always the fact that you have to start with the 5 prayers immediately. No, making a habit is always easy if you start off in an easy manner. And that would be, for example, you say, okay, I'm going to say one prayer out of those 5 every day. Make yourself regular in that, and then when you're regular, maybe you will add one more after some months or maybe some weeks, and so on and so forth until you reach the 5 prayers out of your own heart's desire. The third aspect that might help you here is that you can just offer the farz part of the prayer, nothing else. That, for example, you offer the 2 rakats of Fajr, the 4 of Zohar, the 4 of Asr, the 3 of Maghrib, and the 4 of Isha. That's all. All the rest of the rakats of each of these prayers, they are optional to you. They are left totally to your discretion. If you have the time, if you have the desire, if you have the urge to thank God even more. So the third thing that's going to help you is that you just offer the farz. When I say the farz, of course, I refer to the obligatory rakats or the mandatory rakats of the prayer and nothing else. So this is going to make your prayer even more easy. So you see, as you go down in your life, as you go up, I would say, in your life as well, you'll slowly maybe add the optional parts like the nafals and the sunnahs to pray as well. But again, you must remember that as far as the other parts of the prayer are concerned, or the other rakats, they are entirely your discretion. They are entirely optional. You don't have to pray, but if you pray, it's a good thing, because the more the merrier. The more you're able to thank God, the better it is for you. But the obligatory part is the part in which you're bound by God to do so. But in all the other areas, it's entirely up to your own personal discretion. So we see that if you pray in your own language as well as in Arabic, and again, if you start off with 1 prayer at a time and add, and then again in this third instance in which you are just pray the farz rakat, you see, I have outlined 3 very strong steps for you, which has, I think, already made the prayer pretty easy for you, maybe different from how you have been taught by your Qari Sahib or maybe your parents. So this is the third aspect. And the fourth thing that I'd like to suggest, my dear friends, is that do make an effort to understand what you say in the Arabic part. So you don't need to make that effort in your English or Urdu part because you already know the language. But whatever you utter in Arabic, it's just a few words, the Surah Fatiha and then the Surah that you read after it. You know that, and there are just few words that you have learnt by heart already, the Arabic part. All that you need to do is to learn the translation so that you are with God even in the part in which you don't fully understand the language. So this will make your prayer even more interesting, because in one part you already are doing in your own language, and the other part in which you're doing in God's language is the one whose translation you already know. So that's going to add another, I would say, impetus in your prayer, more interest in your prayer, and you'll be more concentrated and you'll be more focused in your prayer. And finally, the last point that I'd like to make here is that praying, of course, is something which is always easy if you are able to understand that why do we pray? Why is it that why is the need at all arises that we pray to God? And I always give this example that in your own life, whenever you get something from anyone, for example, a gift from anyone, what is the thing that you immediately realize? You think, well, you say that, oh, I've got this from my friend, so whenever my chance comes, I'm going to return it in even a better format. Because you see, you feel gratified. You feel that someone has done a favor to you. And the instant reaction of that favor is that you return a favor by another favor. If someone has done a favor to you, you would like to reciprocate. So you see, this is very similar with what we do with God when we are praying. So the numerous gifts that God has given us, we cannot thank Him enough for that. So the only thing that we can do is that we stand up in prayer on those 5 occasions and make the best out of them by expressing our gratitude, by thanking God, by always acknowledging His favors, and not brooding on what we don't have, but always thanking on what we have. So you see, if you program yourself as to why I pray, always make it or compare it what you do in your own life, that you always reciprocate your favors with your friends. You would not like to hold back. In fact, what you'd like to do is that you'd return a favor by a bigger favor. I mean, on most occasions, you would like that you give back in an even better format than what you received. But of course, we cannot do this with God. So the least that we can do is to thank Him on certain occasions. And if these occasions, as I earlier outlined, are the ones in which you can pray in your own language and in the language of God, as well as the fact that you start off with the farz rakat, I think prayer or praying can be made a very, very interesting phenomenon. It's not just prayers made easy, it's made, I think it's called, more appropriately, it could be called prayers made interesting. And you get yourself engaged to God, you get yourself in touch with someone who created you, someone who can always help you, someone who can always support you. You see, what happens is all supports are temporary. Even the closest of your friends, you cannot confide all of what you have in your mind. Am I correct? Even your closest friends, you're not able to confide everything that you have in mind. But with God, this is not the case. He already knows what your thoughts are. So to connect with Him through the prayer and connect in a manner that you are able to talk to Him in your own language and in His language is going to make your prayer very, very interesting, inshallah. Okay, now let's change gears. The next segment that we're going to talk about is the art of criticism, how we should criticize. I think to all of us, criticism comes naturally, isn't it? We feel very, very happy, we feel very quenched, very relished when we critique someone, because you see, what criticism does is it satisfies your inner soul, or your inner, I would say, bad part of your soul, in which you find yourself, oh, you're superior to the other person, you're in a better position. So I'm not talking about the criticism in which you are actually condemning a person or maybe feeling jealous of that person. No. What I'm talking about is how can you learn the art of constructive criticism? Because you see, criticism is always, if it is used properly, if it is done properly, it can really help. It can change the world around you. It can change the lives around you. It can change the people around you. Because if it is done in a certain fashion and you have actually made a case in point, you have a well-prepared case in which you can really reform a person. Because you see, if the purpose of your criticism is to reform a person or a situation, then if you're able to succeed in that, you can well imagine that the world around you could be much better than, of course, it was before. So the art of constructive criticism, I would say, let's learn it. Let's start by a few tips. Number one, the first tip. So what's the first tip? The first tip is that start every criticism by some words of praise and acknowledgement for the person, or to the person that you are going to criticize. So if you're going to criticize your sister or your brother or your friend, start off by acknowledging what he or she has done, or he or she should be praised for. For example, when you are criticizing someone, you know that there are certain qualities as well in that person. So it's not always the critical points that need to be mentioned first. In fact, come up with those points of gratitude and praise and how you benefited from that person. So what this will do is, it will make yourself a well-wisher of that person. The other person will feel that as if he or she is talking to someone who is his or her real friend, because you're not going to just blast off with that criticism as soon as it comes to your mind. What you're going to do is, you're going to first make that person comfortable by acknowledging him, by appreciating him or her, by telling him or her how good he or she is in certain areas, how the world or maybe the society around him or her has benefited from his or her talents. So you start off with every criticism by words of praise. And these words of praise should not be flattery. They should not be wrong sort of a praise which a person doesn't have. I mean, you're not going to praise someone for what he or she doesn't have. No. Find out those genuine qualities that he or she has. Start off by these words of acknowledgement, because you see, we are very weak people and we need this acknowledgement. We need appreciation from our peers, from our friends, from our sisters, from our young ones, from our senior ones, all of them. When you do that, you put yourself in a position in which when you start criticizing the other person, he or she is going to really hear you well, because you are making a point in which you are in a very sympathetic way telling the other person, well, besides these good qualities that you have, maybe you can just concentrate on one more thing which needs little improvement, you see. So what you can do is, once you praise that person, once you express your appreciation for that person, now comes the point in which you say, well, with all these qualities, there's this one small thing that I'd like to point out, and maybe you can work on it, and maybe you can think on it. And believe me, this has worked wonders, because this has actually made the other person think that maybe if with all these qualities I do have this shortcoming which the other person is pointing out. I may be having this thing which is a bad habit, and since that person has pointed out a lot of words of appreciation for me, so maybe I should reflect or at least think what he has or she has said to us. So that was the first point. The first tip is always begin your criticism by genuine words of praise. The second point is don't use harsh language. You see, what happens is that the criticism that we might have could be very valid, and most of the time it could be very valid. But what happens is that we couch that criticism in very harsh words. We just throw those words, whatever comes to our mind. Those words are going to hurt that person. So you see, even if your criticism is correct, if it is couched in harsh words, in rude words, in words which is going to attack the ego of the other person, it's not going to help. However much you are correct, because of the fact that if you use harsh words, the other person is seldom going to reflect on the content. He would be put off or she would be put off by the manner in which you have said those words. So the second thing is, please use very, very soft words. You can convey the biggest and the harshest of realities in soft words. So think of those soft words. You see, criticism has to be planned. Remember, it's an art. So when you learn an art, it has to be it has to be an advanced sort of a thing. You don't do it at the spur of the moment. So when you learn that art, the first thing that you get to know is start a criticism with word of praise. The second thing is that when you express this criticism, this second area has also to be fully taken into account, that words have to be soft. Words have to be very, very mellow, very, very loving, very, very sympathetic. As I said, you can say a lot of huge things, a lot of, harsh things even in soft words. So select your soft words. The third tip is don't be repetitive. You see, we have this habit of repeating our criticism again and again and again, especially when parents do so in case of their children. Whenever they see their children doing something, they start a barrage of criticism, and this goes on. And of course, not only parents, but all our close friends, they also do that. So the third thing is don't be repetitive, because you see, when you criticize a person, you must leave that person some time to think and reflect what you have said. If you keep on pushing that person, if you keep on pressing that person, that's not going to work. He or she is going to be put off. He's or she away, care to listen to you, and you would lose maybe a very good friend simply by doing those things again and again and over again. So this is the third tip. The fourth tip I would like to point out is that your criticism should be direct. Don't criticize a person without actually addressing that person privately and actually directing your criticism to another friend by actually saying, oh, well, look at my other friend or my other sister, does not do this and that. So what you're doing is, instead of communicating your criticism to the person himself or herself, you are actually trying to criticize that person without even he or she knowing that you are criticizing him, and you are doing it to another person. And you know what? More often than not, that criticism would reach the person that you intend to criticize, and he or she would get hurt. Would always think that why didn't he or she speak to me directly? I'm there. I'm her friend or his friend. I could have been talked to directly. So direct your criticism to your friend, and this needs a lot of courage, because you see, it is a lack of courage which makes you confide your criticism or discuss your criticism with someone else. And you know what? At times that someone else is not very careful, and he or she spills away that criticism, and it starts taking turns, and you find in a moment that what you were just one person, it has spread like wildfire. So the fourth tip is that you must be direct and do it in seclusion. Never do it in front of people, because that's going to hurt that person. So do that criticism in private, going to that person and talking to him or her directly. And the fifth and last tip for criticism, and that is start every criticism with your own self. Self-criticism exceed all other criticisms. So you see, it's easier to criticize others. In the art of criticism, the most difficult part is to criticize your own self. Because you see, it's easier to find out faults of other people. It's very difficult to find our own faults. Or it's difficult to concentrate on our own faults. We immediately notice the faults of other people, and we tend to lose sight of what we have in our own personalities and those shortcomings. So the fifth would be, you start criticism or learn the art of criticism by first criticizing your own self. When I say criticizing your own, I mean that you must look at your own flaws, your own shortcomings, your own bad habits, and start a process of reforming them. They're not going to go away immediately, but just start the them. So these are the 5 criticisms, I would say, that would really, or these 5 tips for constructive criticism that must be followed. So just to revise them, I hope I remember them. So the first one is that you must begin every criticism with words of praise. The second one is don't use harsh words. The third one is your criticism must not be repetitive. It should be, you should give space to the other person. And the fourth one is that you must do it directly, not express it on other people first or before other people. And fifth and the last part is, the best criticism is self-criticism. Start with your own self and then move towards others. It could be in parallel as well, but don't forget your own self. You see, it's easier to criticize other people, but at the same time, you do this for your own self as well. Okay? I do help because you see, life is such that when you're moving along in life, criticism is something that it comes so naturally to us that we just cannot avoid it. And we should not avoid it, because if we learn this art of criticism, I can assure you it can be very beneficial for your own self and for the people around you. It can change lives, as I said earlier on. It can literally change the atmosphere that you live in. So criticism is good, is very good, but you must learn this art of criticism. And let me tell you this, if you can really learn this art and apply this art as well, you will become a very successful person yourself. Because you see, that's going to improve yourself and that's going to improve the people around you. You will become a sought after person. And this learning, or this art that you must learn, is indispensable for people who are in responsible positions, for future leaders. All of you who are sitting here are future leaders in some capacity or the other, inshallah. So for each of you to know how to deal with other people, and that dealing, because it relates, a major part of that dealing relates to criticism and to constructively reform people. So you'll really relish yourself, and people will look up to you, and you can become a person who is a good community leader, a good person in whatever capacity he or she is working. Right. So another change of gear, and now an entirely different topic, beauty and makeup. And I think this is something, again, that has been perhaps not properly understood on many occasions, specifically the stance of religion. You see, to beautify yourselves, I am in particular talking about women and girls, because you see, the urge to beautify themselves comes very naturally to them. So just as the urge to criticize comes to all of us very naturally, the urge to beautify yourself, to embellish yourself, to decorate yourself, to look good, comes to women in particular very, very naturally. And religion has not prohibited this feeling. It has only, I would say, given it a certain specific form, so that those feelings can be expressed in a very pure way, in a way that you are able to satisfy your desire and at the same time not create anything which makes you or maybe the people around you a center of discussion or a center of as you well said, that when you are living in a society in which you would like to attract attention, what happens is that your outward appearance or your outward look is the thing that catches the eye, and that's what makes the other person leave aside a lot of things and concentrate on the external part of your soul, or your persona, and neglect what you have from the inside part of your soul as well. So what our religion has told us is that as far as makeup is concerned, as far as beautifying yourself is concerned, it's perfectly okay and normal on those areas of your body which are naturally left exposed, which have no reason for unless we have them. And that is your face, your hands, and your feet. So faces, hands, and feet is perfectly okay. Of course, it should be a very decent sort of a makeup. It should be a decent sort of a jewelry that you wear on these areas, but it's perfectly fine if you do them. And places where you create yourself, then those places have to be covered except to your very close relatives to which you can expose them. For example, your hair. So if you've not made up your hair, if you've not embellished your hair, you don't need to cover your hair. But if you've made up your hair, you have embellished it, if you have beautified it, that hair, because this is something which is which our religion wants, that we should not display our finery, we should not display our beauty, except of course what God has given areas which are generally left exposed, as I said, which is your face, hands, and feet. So, for example, if you wear a lipstick or you put on put that whatever that is called blush on, I think, yeah. If you put on the blush on, or maybe some other things, whatever you use, that's perfectly okay. If it is done on the face and the hand and the feet, but on all of the places, if they are embellished, then they need to be covered, except if you're exposing yourself to your immediate relatives. So that is a very simple proposition. But the thing that I wanted to point out here is that as far as embellishing yourself is concerned, of course, this is the thing that you're given this latitude, you're given this opportunity to do so. And let me add some other details as well, because there are girls and women who keep asking regarding the makeup that they put on their faces. For example, one of the questions that we often get is that plucking eyebrows or plucking facial hair which grows, because there is a certain hadith which is reported to have been interpreted in a manner that you cannot make your eyebrows, you cannot pluck your facial hair. There are so many girls and women who think that they are prohibited. Again, those hadiths have absolutely a different meaning, and they don't relate to the fact that you cannot make up your eyebrows or make your eyebrows or arch them in a particular way, or, as I said, pluck your facial hair. It's perfectly allowed, plucking your facial hair or shaping your eyebrows or whatever. So in short, whatever you can do on your face. But of course, as you can see, that it is a permission which has been granted, that God in fact wants our embellishments to not be displayed. So you can clearly see that if you want to embellish your face or your hands and your feet, it should not be overly expressed, as if you put on everything on your face and you've not lost your own natural beauty. So it would be in consonance with the spirit of these directives that the amount of makeup that you put on should be reasonable. It should not be overdone, as at times it does happen. So the thing that I wanted to further emphasize here is that it is a very natural thing for ourselves, particularly girls and women, to make up and to look good outwardly. Of course, men also have this urge, but perhaps women have this a little one step further. This urge is more found in them than in men or boys. So the thing that perhaps we need to also concentrate on is that just as you would like to beautify your faces and beautify yourselves by wearing good clothes, of course, there is an apparel, there is a dress of the soul as well, of our inner personality. So if you would like to embellish your outward personality, don't forget your inner personality as well, because that also needs makeup. Yes, makeup. And that is, you beautify your inner self, become a good soul, become a beautiful soul. You cannot see your soul, but you can, of course, you can feel, you can have its presence felt. Because a good soul is a soul who thinks of others. A good soul is a soul who does not want to become the center of attraction of men around them or people around them, and lose sight of the higher goals in life and higher missions in life, etc. So if you have, okay, if it's fine if you embellish yourself from the outside, but the message which this embellishment should give you is that our inner person also needs that beautification. It also needs that embellishment. And the embellishment of the soul is to become a considerate person, is to become a truthful person, is to think of others, is to always put yourself in the shoes of others, is to sympathize with them, is to become selfless, is also to make other people realize that beauty lies in simplicity. The more simple you are, the more beautiful you are. The more you are, the more you are closer to a lot of other things in life that you tend to forget. So I'll not take up any more time on this, because I think maybe you have a lot of questions and we can take up in that Q&A session regarding this. But primarily, as I said, that facial makeup and on the hands and the feet is something which your religion has allowed. And on other places, when you do makeup, then according to religion, they need to be covered. Now, the last segment. The last segment, if I remember correctly, is that we should have a life with a mission. And before I actually elaborate on what exactly are the ingredients of a life with a mission, I'd like to say one thing, and that is always discover your talent. And that is find out who you are, what you're made of, what are your good qualities, what are your strong points, your strengths. Of course, we all have weaknesses, but here, find out. And by the time you reach a mature age, maybe 16, 17, or even 12, 13, 14, you tend to realize that these are my strong points. These are the points in the society that live in. And maybe if you can or those talents, your profession, in other words, making your passion as your profession, you'll realize that you can really work wonders. You can achieve a lot, because if you fix your mission to be in proportion to what you have in your own self, which of course, as you must be knowing, famously the philosopher Socrates had said many centuries ago, know thyself, discover yourself, find out who you are, what are your talents, what best you can do. Each one of you has tremendous talents, I can assure you. It's just a matter of discovering them. And you know what? I'm going to give you a small questionnaire, which is a very short questionnaire, maybe yes or no. We will float it in the group, the WhatsApp group that we maintain for character counts. You can answer those questions by yes and no, or maybe just brief sentences, and maybe send them to Ghazal, our coordinator, and she and I can help you in making you discover, if you've not already discovered, what best you can do in life. And what best you can do in life vis-a-vis the talent that you have, that should be your mission in life. So don't leave yourself vacant. Don't just pass your life in a routine manner in which we often grow up in our environments. We go for studies, we marry, we have kids, we go for vacation, we have other activities, and that's the end of that, and we just pass away. No, think of yourself that you are a person who's going to leave a mark, who's going to stamp his or her authority on planet Earth, on the society that he or she is going to live in or is living in. And that it can only be done if you have an objective in life, if you have a mission in life. Maybe you're a good painter, maybe you're a good musician, you're a good artist, you could be a good speaker, you could be a good teacher, you could be a good sportswoman or a sportsman, anything. So find out what you are best at and make that best thing that you have your mission in life, your goal in life, and you'll find yourself to be a person who is contributing to other people. You'll find yourself a person who is going to really make a difference to the people around him or her. So as I said, we'll float those 10 small questions in your WhatsApp group. All of you who would like to fix a mission for themselves, I would encourage them to answer those questions and then give us back their feedback or their answers, so that we can help them out in discovering their mission. So if you've already found a mission in life, that's absolutely fine, and that's really great, it's fabulous. But if that's not the case, then it's never too late. Whatever your age, even now you can discover your inner self and put your inner self to use. Because you know what, the biggest thing that a person would like to have is that mental fulfillment, that satisfaction that I'm doing something. And the best way to have that mental satisfaction, spirit, is to be able to do something that you can do best, because that's the thing that you can really, really come out well. If you have that talent in small numbers, when you start polishing it, it grows and grows and grows like a tree. And do remember what Einstein, the famous scientist, once said very famously. He said, genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration, which means that hard work is actually that 99% part, in which if you have that just 1% inspiration or 1% divine part that has been given to you by God, you can actually increase that. And that hard work can improve that 1% inspiration or the 1% talent that you have, and make you a person who is a super person, who is a superman or a superwoman. So if you want to become a superman, not the Superman that you'll see in your movies, but the Superman that you can become, is that you can polish the talent that you have and make that talent be something which is your aim in life. And lastly, make it a point that when you grow up and you get married and you have thing that you can do for your children is to make them realize at an early age what their talent is and how they can actually use their talent to have a mission in life, to have a purpose in life. And to have a mission and a purpose in life is an antidote to a lot of things. It will make you focused. It will never make you feel low. It will never make you feel depressed. It will always make you a positive person. Positivity will be radiated from you. You'll radiate positivity because you're always doing something. You'll always be up to something. Okay, so inshallah we'll circulate those questions in our WhatsApp group, and you can answer them. Anyone who was abstaining, he or she is most welcome. But I would like that if all of you can participate, it would be really very good for you. It might be helpful for you in your future lives. So with these words, I come to an end to this session of our character counts, and I'll now hand over it to Ghazal, who can now inshallah help you out with your questions.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's proceed to our last segment. Many, you are first in the queue. Please ask your question.
Sorry, I'm not being able to hear you. Very faintly.
Okay, weird. I don't know why you can't hear me. Maybe you can move on to the next.
No, maybe you can shout a little. Maybe you can just shout out the question.
Alright, can you hear
Yeah,
me better now?
that's better.
Okay, great. Alright, so I was wondering, so you said that girls, if they comb their hair, they need to cover it?
No.
Or did I hear that?
No. I said that if they embellish their hair, if they put on some makeup on their hair, like for example, anything which beautifies the hair, if you just comb your hair in a simple manner, then covering the hair is not essential, although it may be desirable, but not essential.
So, like, highlights or dyeing your hair or putting hair clips are
Well,
not allowed?
No. I think that that is something of your personal sort of decision. You see, what religion does is it just gives you principal guidelines, and there could be difference in the application of those guidelines. What we are told is that if you have made up your hair in any way, embellished it or done something extra to it, you should cover it. Now, maybe one person thinks that dyeing the hair, or maybe it's not like giving it a new color, or putting on clips, I think is again something very simple. You're not embellishing your hair, you're just organizing your hair. When you put on clips, you tend to organize your hair so that it doesn't fall away and fall on your face. So I think there could be small differences in application. All that you need to put before you is that if you decorate your hair in a way, and that decoration is subjective, it's your own subjective call. So if you feel that thing is actually not part of your decoration, it's just part of your hairstyle maybe, then it could be your decision. And as I said, two girls or two women can differ in the application. They just need to understand the principle.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hamza, Ahmed, you are next. Please ask the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I ask some question not related to today's topics?
Only because we don't have any more questions at this point in time, so go ahead. But I will appreciate if we stick to the topic in future. Thank you.
Okay. I had a question regarding the story of Zulkarnain, which is told in the Surah Kaf. In the Surah, it is told that he constructed a wall by melting different metals. So it must be very tough kind of substance, which should persist over the periods of time long. So we see that the Great Wall of China, which was constructed by the Chinese about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, it is now present as such. But why is that such a huge metallic structure which was built long is not can be witnessed today? Is that so?
Well, I think the reason is because of if you read history, you find out that there were huge floods in those areas and some calamities as well, I believe. But if you read more about the history regarding the inception of that wall and how it was finally destroyed, it was basically natural calamities. Of course, the Chinese or the Great Wall of China was built in a fashion in which it withstood a lot of natural calamities. But that does not exclude the fact that there could be some other walls, even if they are made of metal, which were not exposed to other sorts of natural calamities, like for example earthquakes, or maybe as we know that the area was flooded for some while as well. So I do believe, although we don't have much in history to substantiate this, but I think because of the fact does not exist anymore, it must have been destroyed by some natural calamity.
Okay, so I have one more question regarding the last segment in pursuing some passion. I see we observe in the world that the need for food or to earn money is the biggest challenge we face in our everyday life. So for pursuing our passion, we sometimes need money, we need some resources. And if we have the passion but we don't have the money, then how can we cope with this kind of challenge? So, of course, in this world we have limitations.
Right. So you see that, of course, is a natural limitation which your circumstances impose on you, and the best way to go around that is to do what best you can. You see, even if you have limited resources or you're not able to realize your talent 100%, but what about 10%? Or what about making the best out of what you can do? So all of us live in circumstances. We just cannot subtract our circumstances from our lives. They come in a package. We have to go through them. So I think the best thing that you can do is what best can be done from the available time, from the available sources. What happens is even that goes waste, because when we don't realize that we have a mission, so when we can do something in a very small way, we don't do it because we don't have the realization. So if you have the realization, at least you can do it in a very rudimentary way, in a way it maybe could not manifest itself in its ultimate way, but in a very initial way. And who knows that this thing can make God very happy with you, and He can create more opportunities for you. See, what we have been told by God is that we must try as far as we can, and then you never know that the opportunities that you think at this moment they are no longer there. At times these opportunities knock at your door and they really make a big change in your life. So start off what best you can do, wait for God's help, because when it's going to come, it's going to really make a difference. And if it doesn't come, even then, our responsibility is to make the best out of the time and resources that we have.
Thank you. Mahin, you are next. Please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum.
Right, Islam.
I just had a question about, is hijab hard or not? I'm just a bit confused about that, with the hair covering.
So I just said that if you've made up your hair, if you have decorated it anyway, or adorned it with things, only then you need to cover your hair. If you've just combed your hair, or maybe in a simple hairstyle way, or just organized it in a particular way, then the covering of the head is not compulsory, and it's not a requirement, although it might be desirable. It only becomes compulsory when you have embellished your hair in some form or the other, and that is what we find in the Quran.
So I'm just a little bit confused about like embellishing hair. So you said that it's a little bit subjective. So some people might consider highlights as embellishment, while others don't.
Right.
Just up to them.
Yep, that's up to them. You see, the Quran hasn't given detailed guidance, and it expects us to understand the principles and apply them. And when the stress of the Quran is that towards simplicity, towards more of a simple manner of living and expression of your face, so it says that this is allowed as far as it is on your limbs, which are naturally exposed to people, including the face and your hands and your feet. Other than these limbs, if you need to embellish yourself, just cover yourself so that you don't become a center of attraction, maybe. Or in fact, the stress of the Quran here is slightly different. It says that zalika azka lakum, which means that if you do this, it is more pure for your own heart, something which makes you even more pure. And when God says or talks about purity, He actually refers to the fact that you are more closer to the metaphysical parts of life, in which the higher objectives of life, in which your connection with God matters much more to you perhaps than your outward appearance. So that becomes that becomes a priority in your life, to remain as pure as possible. Your outward appearance, of course, is very important. It's not that we should neglect it. No, we should be very well dressed, very well. We should appear good from our outside. But the only thing is, when we start overdoing these things or indulge in them in an excessive way, do they start hampering our inner purity?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a next written question from the second segment, Art of Criticism. And the question is, the participant is seeking suggestions or tips for on criticizing elders.
Okay. Well, that's a good question, because it's not easy to criticize elders at all, especially if they are your parents. I think one of the biggest tips that helps in criticizing your parents is that come what may, don't be rude to your parents, because you see, children, when they criticize their parents, they start using language which is not appropriate, or they start behaving in a way which is not decent, which is not proper. So the first tip is that be very polite, laugh it out, do it in a very light way, in a very congenial way. Just utter it as if in a matter-of-fact style, so that your parents realize that my son or my daughter has something that he or she would like to share. And this light style does catch attention. If you do it in a very grave way or in a very strong way, it's bound to be counterproductive. The other thing is that at times direct communication, I mean face-to-face conversation with your parents or with your elders, might not be that easy. So maybe you can write an email or a WhatsApp message or anything that you can communicate to your elder in a written format or in a voice note. So that is something in which that person is going to listen in seclusion and go over it. But when you do it directly, face to face, you see, the other person has this urge to reply back immediately and not think on what you have said to him or her. And this is what makes things complicated, and he starts to react, and then the parents start to react, and they get into an argument. So the second tip that I would give is that instead of doing it directly face to face, it'd be good to do it in a subtle way. And these subtle ways, as I said, could be an email, could be a WhatsApp message, could be a written note, could be a voice note, anything in which the other person hears it or reads it and then starts to think about it in seclusion. Because thinking is essential, and then the response is bound to be much more sane. And the third tip in this regard that might help is that even if this fails, because at times parents are so harsh, I've seen parents like that they don't even listen to any such criticism, then the third thing that might help is to involve a third party, a third person, like maybe your elder brother or an elder in the family who is trusted by the elder, your parents, and by yourself as well. They have equal trust in you. This might be a difficult proposition because not always are such people found in a family. But if you find that there is a elder brother or a sister there, you can present your case to him or her and let him or her communicate your grievances, your points to your parents, and that can also help. And the fourth tip I would say is that even if this does not help, then one of the biggest things that can really soften the hearts of your parents is to just remain silent. Just show your disinterest. I mean, not becoming rude, you should answer them in a way, but communicate your dissatisfaction in your silence. You understand? And at times you are doing all the things that they tell you. You don't shy away from the chores that they give you. You run all the errands that they give you, but at the same time you don't talk much. You're just a person who has gone silent. So they are going to bound to notice that my child is not speaking the way he or she used to speak, and this is going to really fall on their conscience if they are really thinking parents. So that is something which can make them notice that you're not happy, that you're not the way you should be, you're not behaving in that. So I mean, I can give you some more tips as well, because some of the other tips that I can suggest, they relate more to a situation or a type of parent that you have, and I can personally help you out if you would like to contact me. But these are the 3 or 4 tips that every person can try regarding communication to your elders. But as I said, the first and the most important thing is that in spite of the wrong attitude of your parents, always be respectful to them as far as possible, because if you don't respect them, you cannot expect them to change. And this respect is not something which is artificial. They have earned this respect. What they have done for you, they have brought you up, they have provided for you in all sorts of things, they have sacrificed many things for you, so they've earned this respect. So respect should always be there. And other than that, you should think of ways in which you can indirectly communicate your grievances, your objections to your parents, and do it in a way that does not make them offended, particularly in certain areas that you think are their sensitive points. So as I said, if anything further needs to be done, I can personally be helpful to you if you can disclose some of the more information that is required, because you see, parents tend to vary from one to another category, and then we have to give some specific tips as well. So I'm available for that if that is needed. But these are the 4 broad, I would say, general tips that any child or any, I would say, a young adult can try in communicating his objections or criticisms to the parents.
Thank you. Naima, you are next, and after that I'll take a question from Jana. Thank you. So Naima, you go ahead.
Yeah, hello. So my question was regarding the segment on criticism. I was going to actually say that you should start criticism by criticizing yourself, but everybody, not everybody can take it that way. Like, I know some people who, if you would start by saying something bad about yourself, they'd be like, oh well, in what position are you then to tell me to do something, to change something that I do, especially if that's similar to what you're telling them to change. And then other people, they need you to be more assertive or more rude for them to actually listen. They don't see you as something unless you actually speak out to them. So what do you say about that?
So that's a very, very good question, and I think that you have to choose your audience of criticism as well. You see, you just cannot criticize someone who is not willing to take criticism. So you see, it's not always your obligation to criticize people. I mean, if you think that the person is not going to take your criticism in the proper context, or maybe something counterproductive would happen, you don't have to criticize. Maybe you can transfer that criticism to some other member of the family, maybe, or some other friend, and you can try it through him or her to do the same thing. So you see, the important thing is that criticism is something which is not an obligation. It is only an obligation when you think that your criticism can make a difference. As that old saying goes, that you cannot make a horse drink water. I mean, you cannot force people, and if you think that you will do so, they will just angrily reply back to you. So that you have to assess the situation. And assessing the situation actually involves the fact that you think on your own part whether my criticism would be taken in the right way, it will be perceived in the right manner. And if you get that inkling, if you get that gut feeling that, well, my criticism is not going to be taken properly and it's going to really cause a lot of problem, so you don't have to do it. I mean, you wait for maybe some other time. At times, God gives you an opportunity, and then you can do it. And at times, you can just ask the help of other people. So take it as a challenge. Take it as a opportunity that you need to wait for in order to convey your criticism. It's not that as soon as you get that thing in mind, you have to do it immediately. No, that's not the case. It becomes your responsibility only when you think that your criticism is going to make a difference, or in general you have that assessment that it will maybe even a 50-50 assessment is good, that my criticism is going to work. And as I said, if you follow those rules, especially the ones in which you praise a person for his or her qualities, the rule number 1, which I said, you will find many people who get angry at you, many people whom you think that they are not going to respond very well, changed. Because you see, you are starting off as their well-wisher. And you don't have to do it in the same instance or the same gathering. Make friends with that person. Start off in a couple of meetings by acknowledging and appreciating the good points. Slowly build upon that. And when you think that you've got the confidence of that person, when you've got the trust of that person, maybe in the 5th or 6th or much later meeting, you can perhaps come forward with the criticism. So you see, the art of criticism itself is couched in a way that if you give time to the other person, in which you make friends, you come closer to that person and make him or her feel that you are his or her well-wisher, the chances of success, they really multiply.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So next, Jana, you go ahead please and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. First of all, I'd just like to thank you. It's a very interesting book. This is the first one I've woken up on time for. It's 8 a.m. here.
Oh.
So I'm really glad about that.
Mm-hmm.
My question lies in the art of criticism category or section.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's more, so personally, I don't know if this is relatable, but I'm quite self-critical and self-analytical. I go very inwards rather than outwards criticizing others, because I think, as someone mentioned before, it's like, who am I to criticize others if I don't feel comfortable in myself? So,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess my question lies in, how would you suggest reframing your sort of mind to be constructive to yourself? Because, like, personally, I can go a bit detailed and start like nitpicking at things that are bad, and then like sort of going around in that instead of being productive about it.
I'm not sure if I fully understood your question. Are you asking the fact that how you can be more effective instead of doing the small things in criticism, you pick up the larger ones? Is that what you're asking? Or if you could just explain more your question?
Yeah, sure. Just in general, how would you suggest being more efficient about constructive criticism within yourself?
Within yourself. Okay, so as far as your own self is concerned, I think I'm going to devote a segment maybe next week or in the coming weeks as to how you can do constructive self-criticism, because that's a very, very intricate topic. It's also a very difficult one because it's not easy. I mean, it's always easy to criticize yourself verbally or analytically, but to implement that criticism and how you can go about following that criticism in your own personal lives is a plan. And I have a certain plan. I have worked out a certain plan for, of course, people who are interested. And hopefully, if you are awake in the next session at the same time and you catch us, you can maybe participate live or maybe listen to the recording later on. But I'm going to touch upon this question in a more comprehensive way as a complete segment in one of the coming weeks, maybe even the next week, because I think it's a very, very important thing. And it's not just something that's philosophical. It's not just something which is it's not a mind exercise. It's not just a mind exercise. Of course, it starts off with a mind exercise, but actually it has to translate into your actions, into your deeds. So if you could just wait maybe for 1 week, and inshallah we're going to cover this topic and try to give you useful tips on how efficiently you can be self-critical.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely be setting that up.
Thank you so much. I have one written question and I'll read it out for you, sir. So the question is, hijab is not meant to cover only one's hair, it's also to cover the chest. So isn't it hijab a must?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the word hijab. Frankly, the word has never been used in the Quran in the sense that we generally use it, and that of course refers to the fact that you cover up. The word hijab is never used in the Quran for this purpose. It is actually, hijab in Arabic means a curtain, an obstruction, and in the Quran is only used in a certain context in which the wives of the Prophet were told that you should just not expose yourself to these hypocrites who just come barging into your house and try to scandalize your personal life. So unfortunately, a word which was very specific to a situation, it got generalized as if hijab means something in which you have to cover yourself in a certain way. On the other hand, what the Quran tells us is that as far as your organs are concerned, which can be attractive to the opposite gender, of course the chest is included in that, the chest of women is included in that. The Quran says that should be yahfazna furujahunna, which means that it should not show to the other person. That could be through a covering like a dupatta that you wear or a chadar or anything, and that could be through a loose, in fact the kameez that you wear or the upper part of your garment that you wear in a loose way. So it's not that you have to cover your garment, your chest. It's that you don't have to wear your garments in a way that they don't get exposed and their contours and their outline is not apparent. So that can be done in several ways. And as I said, one of the ways is that you can wear a clothing in which it's loosely fitted and they don't become apparent. And you can do something like covering as well. So covering, what has been actually mentioned in the Quran is وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ. These are the Arabic words which actually tell us that the embellishment that we have worn on our neckline and the curve below that, if you're wearing some necklace maybe or something which is embellishing your neck, then that needs to be covered, and that covering is called through the khimar. Khimar is of course a cloth that covers that. So as far as the covering is concerned, it's specifically meant for that jewelry which is worn in the neck. And as far as the chest is concerned of women, what we are told from the Quran is that it should be done in a way, or clothes should be worn in a way that their outline is not exposed. So again, that's the principal guidance. So that outline can be hidden by wearing something over the chest, or by dressing in a way without wearing any dupatta or something like that, which actually does not show the contours of the chest. And if there is anything that needs explanation, please do, because this is something of a sensitive issue also, and this is not easy to discuss. But I do hope that the sessions that we conduct here are meant for a frank discussion. You don't have to agree with me always, in fact never on any occasion. It's entirely up to you. What I'm presenting is my understanding of how I've understood the sources. So if something does not appeal to you, or something you find contrary to what you have learned or told, you are perfectly free to make your own choice. But what I'd like you to do is, don't feel shy, don't feel held back, don't feel that any subject is a taboo subject. There's no such thing as a taboo subject. In our session, you can discuss anything, you can object to anything, you can have anything that comes or crosses your mind and share with us.
Much appreciated. Next we have Nida Abbasi.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Actually, I want to ask you a question about criticism, and it also goes back to your previous session, which was about argument. Often we have, criticism leads to a lot of arguments. But if you, delay your criticism, and if you do not get into arguments, as you had mentioned last session, try and avoid situations where an argument could result. My question is, what kind of a society are we creating if we are, it's more like, will be pushovers where, it's okay, we would never criticize, we would never, argue. So my question is, what kind of a society are we creating in the long run if this is what we're most concerned about?
No, actually, what we perhaps said was that getting into an argument is something which at times you cannot help. You see, when you get angry, it could be an impulsive reaction because something has happened against your expectations. So anger management, so that's an art in itself. So we talked about that last week, I think. So just as criticism or constructive criticism is a skill, it's an art that we need to learn. So in a very similar way, human emotions, they need to be channelized, they need to be disciplined. And one of the biggest human emotions that can play havoc is anger. So we discussed that how if we get angry, we get really blown up, and we get mad, and we have that frenzied feeling that we're going to just do something. So what are the tips, or what are some of the practicalities that can be done in order to save ourselves or save the day from causing anything which can really be disastrous? So I think the purpose was that the society that we intend to create when we discuss such topics is a society in which self-restraint is practiced. So society in which you are sympathetic to other people, you're not overcritical of other people, you're not always finding faults on other people. So you see, the direction of all these talks or these segments is that how efficiently you can navigate in the life that you are passing through. So today this is a subject which is being taught in universities, and I think it's taught on the internet as well, which is called life skills. So I think what I'm trying to explain in a rather different way in some of the segments are the same life skills which are being taught in internet sessions by Hindu gurus, by many other Buddhists maybe, or even people who are Jews and Christians, in a way that they are able to let you know that when you lead a life, you are an emotional person, you're a person who gets happy, you're a person who gets sad. How can you cope with these extreme emotions, these extreme situations in life? So they're called these life skills. So I think anger management or the art of anger management or the art of criticism was actually taken up by me as a life skill that I learned. Of course, I'm still learning, but I tried to learn it as far as I could, and now I'm transferring that to people like you, so that you are equipped with these life skills. And when you enter life, if you have these skills, the chances for you to become successful in this world, to achieve something, and to have, of course, a greater reward before God when you come before Him, are much more than in those normal circumstances. So these are the life skills that we would like you to understand. And the society, as you said, that we are trying to create here is a society which is based on self-restraint, self-discipline, and of course a due regard for the other person, and empathetically and sympathetically going along with the other person's feelings. I'm not sure if I've answered your question. If I haven't, please ask again.
No, thank you. Thank you. That did answer the question.
Thank you so much. Next, Zain and Amina, please go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. This is a question about the art of criticism. It was mostly explained within a social sort of family construct. That
Right.
If you're using it within a workplace,
Right.
you may not be able to fully basically use the art of criticism and take a more blunt approach to how you criticize.
Right.
Are there any tips for this?
For what? For which part? I mean, the social aspect?
The criticizing part.
Could you explain a little more? Because I tried to be as comprehensive as I could, because this is not just the social area or your workplace maybe, but it goes beyond the workplace. It generally comes or is a life skill that you should learn in any circumstances, in any environment that you live in, and not just confined to your workplace or your home environment. But if I haven't understood your question, could you just go over it again, please?
So, for example, in a workplace, if you're at a managerial level, you wouldn't, in most cases, sort of criticize yourself in front of your own employees, because there's that sort of managerial employee barrier.
Right.
But at the same time, you want to criticize them in a positive sort of attitude.
Okay, I get you now. So you see, in this case, it's not that you need to criticize yourself in front of others. No, this is not what I said. What I meant actually. I never meant that when you do that self-criticism, it has to be in front of other people. No, you have to do it privately. When you are self-critical, you are trying to improve yourself by realizing what bad things you are doing, or what evil things you are doing, or what wrong things you are doing. It's a personal and a private affair. And by becoming a better individual, by getting to know what you're doing, so you're doing that personal exercise on your own self. Now, as far as your employees are concerned, you see, it's not just a matter of personal relationship. They are also bound in a contract in which they were allotted certain duties, certain obligations. And for example, if one of our employees comes up and says, and he doesn't have a legitimate excuse, and you assigned a certain task to him and he could not do it, and he also does not have any excuse for that. So there could be a number of things that you have done and or could have done, because you see, every organization has a culture. At times you give that person a warning. At times you make him realize that these are your responsibilities. If you don't do them, that's not going to work. At times you call him personally and ask him, but what made you neglect your duties? He could be having a very valid reason. For example, someone in his house could be sick, or maybe he had some other problems that made him distracted from the duty that you assigned him. So you see, conversing with your employee who is falling short in his duties is something that makes you an effective leader, and not criticizing your employee in front of other people. So you call him to your office in a personal way, and you try to find out the reasons. And if you get this feeling that this person is no good, of course, then you have a very gradual way or a procedure laid out in your organization in which you could relieve that person. But if you think that person is a good person, he hasn't done his job because of certain issues that he couldn't have overcome, and if I had been in his place, I too would have been maybe handicapped by not doing that assignment on time. So you give that person some time. You speak to him in a sympathetic tone and tell him, okay, if this is the reason, I give you another chance. So you see, dealing with your employees in a way that you need to criticize them in an office culture, again calls for that sympathetic behavior in which you try to find out the cause why that person is not performing well. If you nail the cause as something in which he is deliberately overlooking his duties, he's shirking his responsibilities, of course you can just relieve him of his duties. But if he has some excuse, then maybe a good culture, a good office culture. I've seen so many things, so many offices who give the other person the confidence that if you were not able to do it, it's okay. We'll do it, inshallah, the next time. So these are some of the ways in which you can deal with your employees. But as far as being self-critical is concerned, or any other criticism is concerned, this is a very private matter. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to just say that this is what I'm doing, or don't have to do it in front of people. It's like a personal exercise for your own self. And for other people, of course, again, it has to be a one-to-one affair, not criticizing people in front of many other people, but taking him or her away and communicating what you would like to communicate.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Sarah Barry. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum.
So I know you've already touched on this topic like 3 times already, but it's about the hijab thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that we're supposed to cover our head if we embellish it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in Surah An-Nur, it says that I'm just gonna quote the translation. It says, "And to wrap a portion of their head covers over their chests and not to expose their adornment."
Right.
So I understand your point that you have to cover the chest and the adornment, but it also says here to wrap a portion of their head covers.
Right.
And since the Quran already says, mentions the word head covers, and how to, position it.
Right.
Isn't it already like, it shouldn't be arguable
Right.
that, that you're supposed to wear hijab or not?
That's
Isn't it very straightforward if the Quran says it?
Yes, that's a very nice question, a very pertinent question. Actually, the translation is not entirely correct. The word khimar, which is used in Arabic, is translated as head cover. It's not, the khimar is not a head cover, it's just a chadar, it's just a dupatta type of a thing. So when it says, وَلْيَضْرِبْنَا بِخُمُورِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ, they should cover their chests with a khimar, with a covering. The word cover is what is being said here, and not a head covering. And again, that covering is meant for the hiding of your neckline and the jewelry that you're wearing on the neckline, and it's not talking about your head at all. So the word khimar has been inaccurately translated as head cover. It does not say, it does not mean head cover. It just refers to a dupatta or a cover or anything which is of the form of a cloth, like a chadar that you find at home. So I think it is here that the difference of opinion lies, and because of the fact that many of the translators of the Quran have translated the word khimar as head covering, has this confusion arisen in your mind. But of course, as I said, you're free to follow either of the translations. But if you have to learn more, because I was actually not, my topic today was not per se the clothwear or the clothwear of women or men. Maybe we can make it a point of discussion in some of the coming weeks. I was just referring to the makeup part, and that was why it partially came into discussion. So if you would like, I can maybe elaborate more at why our translation is just covering and not head covering, and why is it that many of the scholars translate it as head cover. So it's just that subtle difference of opinion in the translation of the word khimar that has caused this difference of opinion.
Okay. I have another question about threading and shaping the eyebrows. Okay, so you said that we're allowed to shape the eyebrows, right? So actually, I'm just going to quote this again. So Abdul Allah ibn
Masood, I will let you. I know that hadith. That is why I said that has been wrongly interpreted. The word used in that hadith is tanammus. That's another Arabic word. Tanammasa has been translated as plucking the eyebrows or plucking the facial hair. I mean anything which is the hairy part of the face. Tanammasa or tanammus in Arabic actually was a custom in the Arabic society in which they would shave off part of this the forehead, the hair which is right here, and they would just make it in a shape in which it would distort the appearance of your actual hair and give you an appearance which was not very pleasing to the eye. So again, it's a problem of translation. The word tanammasa has been translated as plucking facial hair. If you know even slightly Arabic, or maybe if you can consult an Arabic English dictionary, just look for the word tanammus or tanammasa, and you'll find that it does not mean plucking facial hair, as is the case which has been translated here in the hadith of Abdullah bin Masood. It is actually a case in which your forehead was made up in a very strange way, and it gave women of the times of the Prophet a very, very awkward appearance. So again, I'm sorry, it's a question of translation, and you don't have to, just trust me. You can just go to a good Arabic English translator, Google Translator, or even a very good dictionary of Arabic and English, and just type this word tanammus and see what the lexicon says, see what the people who have compiled a dictionary say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next question is by Mahin. Mahin, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So I have I have some trouble understanding completely why there's a distinction in treatment between the outward appearance between men and women. So as previously mentioned, you said keeping yourself covered keeps you pure. Is that equally important for both men and women? And if it's not, why?
Right. It's equally important for both men and women. So you see the words which the Quran says is وَلْيَحْفَظْنَا فُرُوجَهُنَّ, which means that your sexual organs need to be covered. And of course, we know what those organs are, because women have an organ which men don't have, specifically the breasts. So had men been given the same form or shape, maybe they would have been given the same directive as well. So basically what we are told is we have to cover our private parts. We have to cover these sexual parts. And for men, of course, because of the fact that the chest is not regarded to be a sexual part, for women it is. So it's not because men and women are discriminated. It's just because the physical difference between men and women, in which an extra private part is carried by a woman which is not carried by men, that this difference has arisen. And you can clearly see this by actually saying, by actually comparing the directives which are given in Surah Nur. They are absolutely equal to men and women. For example, the first directive is يغضوا من أبصارهم, which means you restrain your eyes from taking extra liberty. You don't stare at the opposite gender. This directive is exactly for men and women. Then وَلْيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ, which means that you should not expose your private parts. You should not wear a dress which exposes your sexual organs, your private parts to the public. Exactly the same for men and women. The only thing is, because women have an additional private part than men, is that things said. So you see that these directives apply equally. And the difference is not because of discrimination between a man or a woman, but because of a different physical form which both of them have.
Okay, thank you.
Rayan, you are next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Right.
Adding on to the previous question, so I do understand how women and men are biologically somewhat different, but how does this apply to covering your head and your hair? Because if women are, told to cover their hair with hijab, why wouldn't men be told to do the same?
Because you see, as far as men are concerned, this display of natural urge of beauty is if you look on history and just not concentrate on what's going on in the last 10, 15 or couple of decades that we have passed through, in which of course a lot of standards have changed in certain areas. This urge of beautification, this urge of embellishing oneself is naturally, is biologically, it's found more in women. I mean, you would not find men doing makeup the way women do. For example, lipsticks, or I know what you have in mind, that today men have changed a lot, and they perhaps do the same makeup or close to what women do. But this was not always the case. And again, if it is done today, it's again something of an exception. Not all men do it. So the urge to beautify oneself in a manner that you can look better, or you can look more attractive, is found more in women in history, in all periods of time, even today, where the urge to look better in your facial appearance by putting on that makeup is found much more in women than in men. So this difference is because of that urge, the difference or the extent of the urge which is found in the two genders. And this is a general piece of knowledge as well, that this beautification, the way it manifests itself, it might be a thing of a difference, or maybe even in parity today, it could be very equal. But generally that equality exists in a very, very particular class of people. If you take mankind as a whole, the 6.5 billion people who live today, and the billions of people who have lived ever since inception of mankind, you'll find that this is a general sort of a rule in which the outer embellishment of women, I would say the internal urge for a woman to make herself or appear herself more attractive is more than men.
Thank you.
Thank you. Minnie, go ahead. You can ask your question.
I had two more questions, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's a follow-up on Maheen's question? You said that women have to cover their breasts because that's an extra sexual organ that they have. But like, what about arms and back and legs and all that? Those aren't sexual.
So, first of all, I didn't say that they need to cover their breasts. What I said is that the Quran says that they have to. The exact words are protect their sexual organs, or they need to be aware of the fact. It's not that they are covering their sexual organs; they are making them not prominent. So it's not always by covering them. It could be by a loose sort of a cloth as well, by a loose apparel. So that was just one correction. As far as the fact is concerned, that how is it that it does not extend to the other parts of the body? Well, it does extend to the other parts of the body. It's at least till your half sleeves, because anything which is an adjacent part to your breasts. You see, if you understand the Arabic language, the Arabic is not saying that you cover your breasts. It's not saying that you cover your sexual organs. It is saying protect them. Yahfazna, which means it goes beyond that. And this Arabic word actually entails the fact that organs which are adjacent to the sexual organs, which are per se sexual organs, they should also be hidden. So in line with your breasts, anything which comes line, and it can encircle all your back, and anything of course below that, that is already included as an extended part, because as I said, we are not told to cover the sexual organs. What we are told is to protect organs in such a way that, of course, this would entail that things which are adjacent to those sexual organs also need to be covered, because you see, they direct the attention from that adjacent part to the main part. I'm not sure if I've been able to explain it, but what I'm saying is the Arabic word is protecting these organs. It's not covering those organs. Had it been the word covering those organs, we would have been sufficient. It would have been sufficient if only the breasts would have been covered in any way, either covered or loosely fitted garments be worn. But because of the word of the fact that we have used a different word, the Quran has used a different word, there is an extension, or the extended parts of their sexual organs also need to be covered.
So basically, like anything like above the breasts to below should be covered.
Right.
Or hidden.
Yeah. So if you take a complete picture, you will find that a minimum covering would be, if you're not wearing jewelry in your neck, anything which is above your breasts all the way up to your knees. That is an essential part that should be covered. Other than these parts, of course, when I say all the way down, it includes half of your sleeves, and if you go all the way down, it goes to your knees, because again, the extension of your lower sexual part, the vagina, etc., that the lower part is the protection would be the most adjacent part would be the upper part of the legs, of course, which are from your knee to your upper part. So I would say that the complete picture here would be that when you protect your organs, it would start, and that would be the minimum requirement. If you go ahead, that's another thing, of course, that we can discuss later on, because when we discuss those verses, some of the other aspects will come apparent as well. But in this short answer that I can give is that yes, something which is above your breast and goes all the way down your knees with your sleeves, half of your sleeves being covered.
Okay, that makes more sense. Also, about the beauty part and the makeup part, what about nail polish? Because I have so many people tell me that my wudu won't be accepted, or my prayers won't be accepted because I wear nail polish. But I haven't read anywhere in the Quran, at least I haven't finished the whole Quran yet, but I've never read anywhere to wear a brit so far that's a must.
No, this is not a must at all. You can do wuzu over your nail polish. It's fine as far as I am concerned. And of course, nail polishes never existed in the time of the Prophet. They used to apply henna. If you wear a nail polish, and before putting all that nail polish, you just do wuzu, and then you put on that nail polish, and every subsequent wuzu is done on the nail polish, that's just fine. So I think again, this is a question of a difference of opinion, because of the fact that we don't have a clear-cut guidance from the Prophet, because nail polishes never existed in the times of the Prophet. But keeping in view the spirit of the directive, I personally think that putting on a nail polish is perfectly okay, and after that, every subsequent wuzu which you do, the ablution that you do, can be done on the part of your nails, which has already been covered by a nail polish.
Oh, so would that apply to like facial makeup too?
Well, facial makeup is something that would not be applied because you see, if you done that facial makeup in a way that, for example, it's a very elaborate sort of a thing. For example, when you go to a wedding or something, I mean, excluding that part, if you look at your face in which you have applied your makeup, because of the fact that your face needs to be cleaned or maybe washed. So I think that whether you've done it in a way that you are going to a party and you've made more than your normal makeup, or you've done it in a normal way, in both cases for wuzu, you would perhaps need to wash the face and do the makeup again.
Thank you so much. So we have 2 written questions, and then we have one more question, oral question from a participant. So I'll read the written question first. It is saying that isn't it purity more about your intention rather than how you present yourself?
Absolutely it is. But you see, there are some standards of purity which God has fixed as well. You see, at times the nature of purity is such that He has left it to our discretion and just given us in a principal guidance. And at times He has outlined the way in which this purity can be achieved. So in cases where these outlines have been mentioned by God, we of course we need to follow them. But in cases where they have been left to our discretion, to our own decision, in those cases we are of course free to apply them.
Thank you. And the next one is, you said it's okay to shape eyebrows, but doing that beautifies the face, and our beauty is what we should hide or / protect. So wouldn't that be leading us to concluding that shaping of eyebrows is in fact haram for women?
So as I said, that is not the case with regarding your face, because the Quran says illa ma zahara minha, which is exactly a Quranic word, which an expression which tells us that it's not that beauty that needs to be hidden. The Quran has not said that anywhere. It is said that beauty which is apparent or cannot be, it's worn on those limbs which are generally not hidden. They are an exception. You see, la yubdina zinatahunna illa ma zahara minha. They should not display their embellishments except those embellishments which are worn on limbs which are generally not covered. So this is an exception which God Himself has given us, and it would be erroneous to conclude that in cases that the Quran is telling us to hide our beauty. No, it's telling us to hide our ornaments which we are wearing on limbs other than our face and our hands and our feet.
Thank you so much. So our last question of the session is by Mahin. So Mahin, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi again. I think many men focus like their aesthetics on like in a different way. So not by makeup, but they go to the gym and like they make muscles and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it hasn't been said in the Quran where like that they're told to cover up their arms or legs or back or wear any sort of loose clothing. So.
No,
yeah.
In fact, the Quran has told them to wear clothes which does not show off their private parts. As I said, this directive is equally for men and women. The only thing is for women, they have an extra biological private part. As far as men are concerned, even if you make muscles or you make a body, the Quran does not regard it to be a means of, or it does not regard it to be a sexual part in itself, per se. It could be something of an extension, but not per se. So therefore, the essential part which men are required to cover is something which starts from their navel and goes all the way down to their knees, because their private parts are basically two, one in the front and one behind, and they need to be covered. And as I said, it's not just covering; they need to be protected. So the extended areas which lie adjacent to these private parts need to be covered as well. So if you go up, it will go to the navel. If you go down, it will go down to the knees. So you see, it depends on what you call a sexual part or not. As far as the Quran is concerned, if I am very blatant, just to make you understand, for women, your breasts, your vagina, and your behind. These are the three things are your private parts. And they have to be not just covered, they have to be protected, which means the adjacent parts have to be covered as well. For men, it is their penis and their behind. That is all. That is their sexual organ. And again, because of the words that have been used is yahfazna, protection. It means that parts, not only these two parts, but adjacent or parts which are adjacent to them, which can lead the eye towards the actual part, need to be covered as well. So 3 in women and 2 in men. That is what the Quran calls private parts. Had this biological difference not been there, the directives would have been exactly the same.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, and to all the participants. It's time that we conclude our session for the day, and we'll see you next week, inshallah.
Okay. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so much.